The snow fell silently over the small village of Râșnov, a white layer covering the secrets buried beneath its cobblestone streets. I had always loved Christmas, but this year there was something different, a strange feeling that wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the air, but there was a bitter undertone, as if something was about to happen. What I didn't know was that this night would bring to light the mysteries that the village tried to forget. The story begins with a whisper, a legend that circulated among the villagers. The House of Vâlcea, an old building at the top of the hill, known for having harbored an unspeakable tragedy. They said that on Christmas, the spirits of those who had suffered there would return, seeking justice or perhaps revenge. I, being a skeptic, paid no heed to these tales, but the unease in my chest could not be ignored. What was so special about this Christmas? Why did I feel that the past was about to manifest? That night, while the village children played and the adults gathered to celebrate, I decided to visit the House of Vâlcea. Curiosity, mixed with bravery, led me to the creaking door. As soon as I stepped inside, a biting cold enveloped me. It was not just the temperature, but a palpable presence. The place was covered in dust and cobwebs, but the feeling that I was not alone was undeniable. Each step echoed, as if the walls were watching me. As I explored, I found a diary on an old table. The pages were yellowed and torn, but I managed to read some passages. It was the story of Elena, a young woman who had lived there. Her life had been marked by pain and despair, and her words spoke of a lost love and a Christmas when everything changed. I consoled myself with the idea that it was nothing more than a lament from the past. But as I read, a shadow seemed to move around me. The atmosphere grew increasingly oppressive, and I began to feel a weight in my heart. I remembered the legends I had heard, and suddenly, the stories about the House of Vâlcea did not seem so absurd. A loud crash echoed, and I turned, my heart racing. A door slammed shut behind me. Fear overcame me, but curiosity insisted on keeping me there. What was I about to discover? Following an impulse, I headed towards the attic. The stairs creaked under my weight, and each step took me deeper into a terrifying silence. I reached a dark space, illuminated only by a faint light coming through a broken window. There, I found something that paralyzed me. A doll, dressed in Christmas attire, with eyes that seemed to follow my movements. It was positioned in a chair, as if waiting for someone. The feeling that I was being watched intensified, and a chill ran down my spine. Suddenly, a voice whispered my name, and I turned, but there was no one. Panic began to set in, and I realized I was in a place I shouldn't be. The house, with its damp and darkened walls, seemed alive, as if it had its own consciousness. I remembered Elena's words, and a terrifying truth formed in my mind. She was not the only one who had suffered there. I was not just a visitor. I was part of a cycle, an echo of the tragedies that had unfolded in that place. The clock on the wall began to chime, and with each toll, an image of pain and despair emerged in my mind. I saw Elena, her face marked by sorrow, and I realized that she had been a victim of her circumstances. The Christmas that should have been joyful had turned into a nightmare, and their souls, trapped in that space, cried out for liberation. I didn't know how, but I felt I had to help them. With my heart racing, I searched for a way to break the cycle. I remembered the diary and its pages, the words that could seal or free. What could I do? I began to read aloud, reciting the prayers that Elena had written. The atmosphere changed, and the house seemed to respond, vibrating with intense energy. The doll, once inert, began to move, and the walls pulsed like a heart. Then, Elena's voice echoed, clear and strong. She thanked me, and with that I felt a weight lift. The souls that had been trapped were finally being freed. The house began to crumble around me, and I ran toward the exit, determined not to be swallowed by that dark past. As I crossed the threshold, the house exploded in a wave of light, and I fell into the cold snow, gasping but free. That Christmas was different. As the snow fell gently, I realized that Elena's story and those of the other souls were now part of me. The legend of the House of Vâlcea would never be forgotten. But now there was hope, a new narrative of liberation and love. The spirit of Christmas had found its way, and I, for a brief moment, was a part of it. That night in Râșnov turned into a nightmare scenario. The liberation of the souls trapped in the House of Vâlcea not only brought a new sense of hope, but also left me at the mercy of forces I did not understand. Even as I walked away from the crumbling house, the weight of what I had witnessed followed me like a shadow. The cold of the snow was nothing compared to the feeling that someone was watching me. In the following days, the village seemed to have returned to its usual rhythm, but an unease lingered in my chest. The villagers talked about the Christmas party that was approaching, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the House of Vâlcea still held secrets. Elena's voice echoed in my mind, and I knew her story was not completely resolved. Something was missing. I decided I needed to investigate further. The first person I sought out was Maria, an old childhood friend who had always shown a keen interest in local legends. She knew the village like the back of her hand and would have information that could help me. I found her at the craft store, surrounded by Christmas decorations that shimmered like stars. When she saw me, her face lit up, but her smile quickly faded as she noticed the worried expression on my face. "You look different," Maria said with a piercing gaze. "What happened at the House of Vâlcea?" I briefly explained my visit and Elena's diary. She fell silent, her expression deepening with concern. The House of Vâlcea has a longer history than you imagine. It's not just a legend, but a cycle of pain that repeats itself. "Do you know more about it? What should we do?" I asked, the urgency in my voice growing. "There is an ancient purification ritual that some people in the village have tried to perform, but it never worked. The house is stubborn, and the souls that dwell there do not give up easily. They need someone who understands them, someone who lives their pain. But I'm not a medium or anything like that," I exclaimed, feeling panic take hold of me again. Sometimes, pain connects us to things we do not understand. You may be the key, but you need to be careful. The closer you get, the more the spirits may try to manifest. Do not underestimate their power. Maria's words left me unsettled, but there was a truth in them that I could not ignore. I was caught in a web of mystery, and I was determined to unravel it, even if it meant facing the unknown. As if that wasn't enough, the atmosphere in Râșnov began to change. Strange occurrences started happening. Some nights, I heard whispers in the deserted streets as if someone was calling my name. Other times, I saw shadows moving between the trees, always in the corner of my eye, but disappearing when I tried to focus. On one of those nights, while watching the snow fall through the window, I received an unexpected visitor. Andrei, the village historian, who used to be a recluse but seemed to have deep knowledge about the legends and stories of Râșnov. He appeared at my door with a serious and worried look. "I heard about what happened to you at the house. We need to talk," he said, entering without waiting for an invitation. I explained to him about Elena's diary and the ritual Maria mentioned. Andrei listened attentively, his gaze lost in deep thoughts. The House of Vâlcea is not an ordinary place. There is a connection between the past and the present that we still do not fully understand. Elena is not the only one trapped there. There are others, and they are starting to manifest in ways we cannot ignore. "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. Recently, some villagers have begun to have strange nightmares, and some even reported seeing spectral figures around the house. This is not just a coincidence. Something is about to happen, and you may be the only one who can prevent it from escalating. Fear and determination mingled in my chest. What should we do? We need to perform the purification ritual, but it won't be easy. You will have to confront the spirits, understand their pains, and promise that they will not be forgotten. If you fail, you may become trapped like them. That idea terrified me, but at the same time, there was an impulse I could not ignore. I could not allow Elena's story and the stories of the other souls to repeat, nor could I let the cycle of pain continue. Without hesitation, I agreed with Andrei. We began to plan the ritual, gathering the few villagers who still believed in the legends and were willing to help. On the night of the ritual, the atmosphere in the village was heavy, and the snow fell in thick flakes, covering everything in a white mantle. The House of Vâlcea loomed before us, imposing and threatening. As the group of villagers gathered in front of the house, the lights seemed to flicker, and a cold wind blew, bringing with it a distant wail. I looked at the faces around me, each reflecting a mix of fear and determination. "Are we ready?" I asked, my voice wavering slightly. Andre nodded, and together we entered the house. The air was thick with tension, and I could feel the souls around us, anxious and restless. As we began the ritual, the walls started to vibrate. A presence manifested, and the cold intensified. What had once been just a whisper was now a scream, and I knew we were about to confront something much greater than I could imagine. The lights began to flicker, and a shadow formed before us. It was Elena, her face pale and sad, but her eyes shone with a mix of hope and pain. Seeing her made my heart race. "I am you," I whispered, and at that moment, I realized that the true battle was not only against the forces that imprisoned her, but also against the weight of the pain I carried myself. If I wanted to free her, I would have to face my own darkness. The challenge was just beginning, and I knew I had to be strong. Christmas in Râșnov would never be the same, and the fate of the village was in my hands. The environment became increasingly oppressive as the lights in the Vâlcea house flickered uncontrollably, as if the house itself were alive and reluctant to accept our presence. The penetrating cold made each breath turn into a cloud of vapor, and I felt the weight of the souls around me, more present and real than ever. What I had imagined to be an act of courage was now revealing itself as a tortuous journey, filled with uncertainties and deep fears. Upon encountering Elena, the sense of connection intensified. It was as if we were linked by an invisible thread, and her expression of sadness reflected the pain I also carried. But there was something more, a shadow of recognition in her eyes that made me freeze for a moment. You know who I am," I murmured, and in that moment, I realized that the entity that was imprisoning her might be connected to something deeper. My own story. "You need to understand the pain," she replied, her voice an echo from afar. "We are what we live, what we feel, and what we lose. You cannot free us without accepting what is buried in your heart." The weight of her words hit me like a blow. What had I hidden? What did I not want to face? The pain of loss, of broken relationships, of unfulfilled promises. I remembered moments when I too had felt trapped, suffocated by memories I would rather forget. And now, in front of that house and the souls crying out for liberation, I realized that the true battle was not just against the spirits, but against the chains I had forged myself. The wind howled outside, and the house seemed to writhe in response to our ritual. The walls trembled, and I could hear whispers intensifying, as if the souls wanted to manifest. A chilling cold ran down my spine, and a wave of despair enveloped me. "We need to continue," I shouted to Andre and the others. But even as I spoke, a new wave of uncertainty hit me. Was I really the key, or just an intruder in their pain? As the ritual progressed, new difficulties began to arise. One of the residents accompanying us, an old man named Nikolai, started to scream, falling to the ground in convulsions. "They are here. They are breaking free." He seemed to be overtaken by an invisible force, and the despair in his eyes reflected the reality that those seeking freedom did not always desire it. What was this freedom if not a new kind of prison? The others began to hesitate. The atmosphere was becoming unbearable, and the voices of the souls were growing louder. "Let's leave. We can't go on," someone shouted, and I felt resistance growing around us. Fear spread like fire in dry straw. What had started as an act of courage now seemed like madness. "No," I shouted, my voice echoing in the house. "If we give up now, they will never find peace. We need to face this together." But even as I spoke, doubts began to eat away at my determination. What did I really know about Elena's pain? Was I not also trapped in my own cycle of suffering? Then, a darker shadow emerged before me, and the figure of a man materialized, his gaze fierce and filled with anger. "You have no permission to be here," he shouted, and the house shook with his presence. Fear turned into absolute terror, and I realized that this was not a simple manifestation of pain, but a force that fed on our own insecurities and laments. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice trembling, but I needed to know. Was he a spirit? The very embodiment of suffering? "I am the guardian of pain," he replied, and his words reverberated like thunder. "Do you think you are capable of freeing those who do not want to be freed? You do not understand the depth of what you are facing." And as he spoke, memories began to infiltrate my mind, like a film projected at high speed. I saw faces of people I loved and lost, moments when I felt alone and powerless. The pain I thought I had overcome now manifested in grotesque forms, and I realized that to free those souls, I needed to confront my own pain. The truth was that I myself was not ready to free myself. In an instant, the house trembled again, and I fell to my knees, tears streaming down my face. "I can't do this alone," I shouted, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. "I am not strong enough." "You don't have to be," Andre approached, placing his hand on my shoulder. "We are with you. Together we can face the shadows." His words ignited a spark of hope within me, but the terror still pulsed around us. The guardian of pain seemed to revel in our despair, and the souls around us continued to writhe in anguish. The battle was far from over, and I realized that for every step we took toward freedom, the darkness grew more intense. I decided that I would not allow fear to dominate me. "Elena," I called, my voice firm, "you are not alone. We will find a way to free you. We will face this together." The house responded to my determination, and the lights began to shine brightly. The guardian of pain hesitated, and I knew that despite the fear still consuming me, there was a growing strength within me. The true battle was not only against the forces that imprisoned us, but also against what made us human. The pain, the loss, and above all, the courage to face the darkness in search of the light. At that moment, as the house pulsed with intense energy, something inside me began to transform. The strength of the guardian of pain seemed to intensify, as if it were feeding off our fear and despair. The lights around us flickered frantically, casting dancing shadows on the walls, and I realized that it wasn't just the house that was alive, but something much more sinister, an ancient and powerful force that lurked in the depths of the House of Vâlcea. Then, like a lightning bolt cutting through the darkness, I heard a different voice, one that did not belong to any of the souls I had encountered until then. It was low and deep, filling the space with a sense of foreboding. "You really think you can change what is predestined?" The voice reverberated off the walls, and my heart raced. "You are merely intruders in a game you do not understand." I looked at Andre and the others, and the expressions of confusion and fear on their faces made me feel a new kind of despair. Whatever we were facing now was not just Elena's pain or that of the other souls. It was something much more vast, a web of destiny and suffering that intertwined the lives of all of us. "Elena," I shouted, but the house seemed to have transformed into a labyrinth of echoes. "What are we doing here? What else didn't you tell me?" The answers were on the tip of my tongue, but the truth seemed to slip through my fingers. Then, to my horror, the figure of the guardian began to fade, and with its disappearance, the house filled with an electric energy, as if the tension in the air was about to explode. A new presence manifested, a woman, wrapped in a black cloak that seemed to absorb the light around her. Her gaze was piercing, and I felt as if she were studying me, stripping bare every part of my soul. "You are more important than you realize," she said, her voice soft but full of power. "You are the bridge between the living and the dead, between what was and what will be. The pain you carry is the key to all of this." "I don't understand," I replied, struggling against the confusion that engulfed me. "What do you mean? Don't you see? The house, the souls, the guardian. All of this is part of a cycle that you feed. Your pain is not just yours. It belongs to all who came here before you. You are tied to them in a way you cannot comprehend." The revelation hit me like a punch to the stomach. The ghosts seeking release were not merely victims, but reflections of collective traumas, memories and experiences intertwined, forming a web of suffering that transcended time. And I, with my own pain, was a part of this web. "You need to choose," the woman said, leaning forward. "Free yourself or remain trapped." but know that your decision will affect everyone. The house feeds on your choice. The environment began to fragment around me, as if reality itself were disintegrating. I saw flashes of past lives, of people I once loved and lost, and of moments when my own pain became a prison. What I had considered an act of bravery now revealed itself as a terrifying moral dilemma. I can't do this, I murmured, my body trembling. I can't carry the weight of all of them. You are not alone, Andre said again, his voice cutting through the confusion. We are in this together. You may be the key, but you don't have to be the only one to open the door. At that moment, I realized that the true twist was not just the revelation of the connection between all the souls and the pain we shared, but the choice I needed to make. To free not only the souls, but also myself. And in doing so, I could finally confront the darkness that surrounded me. The walls began to vibrate with the intensity of the energy building up. The guardian of pain, now just a shadow, seemed to be preparing for a final attack. The woman in the black cloak smiled, but there was a warning in her gaze. Freedom does not come without sacrifices. What are you willing to lose? The tension was palpable, and I knew that my decision would not only affect my fate, but that of everyone around me. The weight of responsibility bore down on me, and the house seemed to whisper, demanding an answer. What was I willing to sacrifice to free those who were trapped, including myself? Time seemed suspended, and I was on the brink of a choice that would change everything. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The battle was far from over, and the true nature of what we faced was just beginning to reveal itself. The house was not just a place of pain, but a battleground where souls fought for redemption, and where I had to confront not only the ghosts of the past, but also the demons that inhabited my own heart. The air was thick with tension, and the house pulsed like a living organism, ready to swallow everything in its path. The presence of the woman in the black cloak grew increasingly oppressive, as if she were sucking the light from around us. The choice is yours, she repeated, and I knew that the gravity of the situation required more from me than I imagined I was capable of giving. But what can I do? I questioned, my voice faltering as I tried to convey courage. I have no power to free these souls, not even my own. You underestimate your strength, she replied, and her deep eyes seemed to penetrate my essence. The pain you carry is a burden, but it is also a weapon. You can use it to break the chains that bind these spirits. Her words echoed in my mind, but I hesitated. The idea of using my pain as a weapon seemed absurd. What if I failed? What if, in trying to free those who were trapped, I ended up losing myself in the process? The house, with its pulsing walls and dark whispers, seemed to sense my hesitation, and the energy in the air intensified, as if it were about to explode. Andre stepped forward, his expression determined. We can do this together. We cannot let fear paralyze us. We have to find a way to help Elena. But how? I asked, feeling hopelessness settle in my heart. What if this costs us more than we are willing to lose? We need to connect with the pain, not run from it, he said, his eyes fixed on mine, as if trying to transmit the courage I no longer felt. If the house feeds on it, maybe we can use that to our advantage. He was right. The house was not just a place of suffering. It was also a battlefield where pain could be transformed. The idea of confronting my own pain terrified me, but at the same time, it seemed to be the only way out. I breathed heavily, trying to gather courage. Let's find the source of this, I declared, more to myself than to them. Let's discover what really happened to Elena and the other souls. The woman in the black cloak watched silently as I began to walk toward the center of the room. The lights flickered frantically, and the feeling of being watched was palpable. I was not alone. The house somehow was aware of our intention. Focusing, I visualized the pain I carried within me. I remembered every loss, every tear I had shed. The pain built up in my chest, a storm of emotions clamoring to be released. I looked at the faces of Andre and the others, searching for a thread of hope. We need to unite, I said. Our pain could be the key. And so, we began to connect, each sharing our own experiences of pain and loss. The stories flowed like a turbulent river, and I realized that together we were forming a bond. The air around us began to vibrate, and the house seemed to respond to our union. But suddenly, a wave of cold swept through the room, and the figure of the guardian of pain reemerged, more powerful and threatening than ever. "Do you think you can change fate?" His voice echoed, reverberating like thunder. "You are merely pawns in a game you do not understand." I felt a wave of panic, and the shadows on the walls began to stir, as if preparing to attack. The woman in the black cloak furrowed her brow, and a look of determination appeared on her face. "You have more power than you realize. The true battle is internal." I felt my sanity being challenged. The reality around me seemed to fade, and I found myself before an abyss of uncertainties. What was happening in my mind? Was I truly beginning to lose my mind? Or was the house trying to make me believe I had no control over the situation? "We cannot give up," Andre shouted, his voice cutting through the confusion. "If pain is the key, then unity is the lock. Let's move forward." His determination gave me strength, and despite the fear that threatened to paralyze me, I knew I had to continue. With a collective cry, we channeled our pain, forming a circle of light around us. The house pulsed, and the walls seemed to crumble under the pressure of the energy we created. However, before we could feel the power of this union, a new wave of pain spread through the room. The presence of the guardian grew, and the souls that had once been silent began to scream, their voices blending into a deafening echo. "You cannot escape the truth." The guardian advanced, his form warping into a mass of shadows and despair. Pain never disappears. It only transforms. The internal struggle intensified. I was caught between the desire to free the souls and the fear of being consumed by darkness. What was I willing to sacrifice? That was the true question. The conflict within me became a storm, and each moment felt like an eternity. And then, as the voices of the souls cried out for liberation, a new realization emerged in my mind. The choice was not only about freeing others, but also about finding my own redemption. The house, the pain, the guardian, all of it was an extension of myself. If I wanted to change fate, I would need to confront the darkness within me first. Time was running out, and the true battle was about to begin. I did not know what awaited me, but one thing was certain. I would need to face not only the guardian, but also the pain I had held onto for so long. It was time to discover what it truly meant to be free. The intensity of the situation increased with every second. The walls of the house moved as if they wanted to swallow us alive, and the whisper of lost souls became a deafening clamor. The guardian of pain approached, its form twisting into a mass of shadows and despair, and I knew the moment of truth was near. "You cannot escape pain." Its voice, a distorted echo, resonated within me. With every word, I felt the ground beneath my feet becoming more unstable, as if reality were crumbling. The internal pressure within me grew, and the idea of confronting not only the guardian but also my own guilt seemed almost unbearable. I remembered the faces that had left me, the promises I failed to keep, the weight of expectations I never met. Pain transformed into an internal labyrinth, and the more I tried to escape, the more lost I felt. "What do you want from me?" I screamed, my voice barely a whisper, suffocated by the emotional storm. "Freedom comes at a price," the guardian replied, its voice full of contempt. "You want to save others, but you cannot save yourself. What kind of hero are you?" His words cut deep like a sharp blade. Was I a hero? I didn't see myself that way. I saw myself more as a fugitive, a person who had failed to protect those I loved. And now, the house, with its pulsating walls and unsettling shadows, seemed to reflect that weakness. Andre, by my side, reached out his hand. "Don't listen to him. Together, we are stronger. Remember what you learned. Pain does not define who we are. It's what we do with it that matters." His words were a beacon amid the darkness. With colossal effort, I began to gather the memories of my pain, not to sink into them, but to transform them into something powerful. I had lost people, but I had also loved intensely. That was my strength. "You're right, Andre," I exclaimed, determination growing within me. "I am not just my pain. I am the love I experienced, the connections I made, and I cannot let that be consumed by fear. The house seemed to hesitate for a moment, as if absorbing the strength of my declaration. The souls around me began to calm, their voices softening, as if waiting for something. The guardian, however, was not satisfied. The energy around us began to stir, and the atmosphere became oppressive. "You cannot change what you are," it roared, and a chilling wind swept through the room, bringing with it a physical pain that hit me like a punch to the stomach. "You are trapped in a cycle, and there is no way out." I felt the pressure rising, the darkness closing in, and panic threatened to consume my reason. But amid the chaos, an idea emerged. What if the cycle was not a prison, but an opportunity? What I really needed was to confront the pain, not as a weakness, but as a part of me that could be transformed. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath, allowing the pain to flow through me instead of trying to contain it. The memories of loss and regret became a whirlwind, but instead of sinking into them, I began to visualize each one as a chain that could be broken. I refused to be a prisoner of my pain, I shouted, feeling the energy intensify. I am more than that. I am the sum of all my experiences, and each one has brought me here. As I opened my eyes, I noticed a light beginning to shine around us, a glow that came from within us, from the connection we had created. Andre and the others joined me, their hands intertwined, and I could feel the collective strength growing. The house, once oppressive, began to vibrate with a new energy, as if responding to our determination. The guardian hesitated, and I knew this was the moment. "Let's free the souls trapped here. Together, we will transform this pain into light." The words burst from me like a war cry, and the energy around us exploded into a whirlwind of colors. The souls, once tormented, began to rise, illuminated by our unity. The house trembled, and the guardian roared in frustration, its dark form twisting in a desperate struggle. I felt the battle intensifying, but at the same time, hope was blossoming. It was an internal and external struggle, a dance between light and darkness, and I knew that the choice between being consumed by fear or embracing my truth was the key to liberation. What was at stake was not just my life, but that of all those who had suffered here. And then, with one last scream, I channeled all the pain, love, and all the memories that defined me. The light around us intensified, and in an instant, I felt the house fade away, as if we were breaking the chains that held us. The guardian screamed, its form disintegrating into shadows, and I knew that victory was within our grasp. But even as the light shone brighter, I felt that the real battle was just beginning. Pain could be transformed, but the path to freedom would require courage and sacrifice. And I was ready to face whatever came next. The light around us pulsed, and I felt the energy in the room intensifying, almost as if the house were reacting to our determination. The guardian of pain, now visibly weakened, looked at me with palpable hatred. His form writhed, and his shadows stretched out like tentacles, trying to reach me. "You think you can defeat pain? You will never escape it." The walls of the house vibrated with every word he spoke, and I felt each breath becoming more difficult. The pressure in my chest increased, but the determination in my heart also grew. "I'm not trying to escape," I shouted, my voice echoing in the darkness. "I'm here to confront pain, to transform it." The light intensified, and the souls around us began to rise, each shining with a new hope. I was not alone. Andre and the others stood by my side, their hands intertwined, forming an unbreakable chain. Together, we were more than the sum of our experiences. We were a force that challenged the darkness. The guardian roared, his dark form expanding, trying to engulf us in a deadly embrace. "You cannot change what it is. Pain is eternal, and you are just an illusion." I felt the truth in his words, but I also realized that pain was not a death sentence, but an essential part of life. It was part of me, but not my entire essence. "Pain is part of the journey, but it's not my destiny," I shouted, challenging him. And in that moment, everything changed. The light emanating from us began to concentrate in a single point, a radiant glow that seemed to defy the shadows. The guardian hesitated, his distorted form wavering before the power of the light. I knew it was time to act. Now, all together, I commanded, and the connection between us strengthened. I focused all the energy I had accumulated, all the love I had experienced, and channeled it toward the Guardian. The light transformed into a powerful beam, illuminating the darkness surrounding us. The Guardian, in a final desperate effort, unleashed a wave of shadows against us, trying to swallow us whole. The shadows collided with the light, creating an explosion that reverberated through the house. I felt the impact, as if a wave of energy were pushing me back. But I stood firm. The love and hope we shared were stronger than any pain he could inflict. "You have no power over us," I yelled, and the light intensified even more. The Guardian seemed to writhe, his form disintegrating under the pressure of the light. The shadows surrounding him began to dissipate, like smoke in the wind. The clamor of lost souls transformed into a chorus of hope, and I realized that the truth the Guardian had tried to hide was finally being revealed. He was not invincible. His strength came from our fear, from our pain, and now, as we faced it together, he was losing his power. "It's time to free you too," I exclaimed, feeling the energy around us stir. I concentrated my focus, not just on defeating him, but on freeing him from his own prison of pain. "You are not just a guardian. You are also a victim. You know pain too." The words reverberated through the room, and for a brief moment, I saw a weakness in his gaze. He hesitated, and the light around us began to envelop him. The shadows that were once his weapons now seemed to retreat, as if being pulled into the light. "No," his scream echoed, but there was a new tension in his voice. "You cannot do this." "I can and I will," I replied, determination firm in my voice. "Pain does not have to be a burden. We can transform it into something beautiful, into strength." And so, with one last push, I channeled everything we were, all the light, all the pain, and all the hope, toward the Guardian. The beam of light exploded, and for a moment, the world around us lit up in a wave of vibrant colors. The shadows of the Guardian began to disintegrate, and I saw his form dissolve, not in an act of destruction, but of liberation. He was not just an evil entity. He was an echo of the pain we all carried. And as he dissolved, I realized that the true victory was not just in defeating him, but in freeing him from his own prison. The light enveloped the house, and the souls were finally released, floating toward the unknown, whispering their thanks as they drifted away. The pressure around me began to ease, and the house, once oppressive, now felt light and welcoming. Andre pulled me close, and together we watched the scene. "You did this," he said, his voice full of admiration. I looked at him, feeling a wave of gratitude. We did this. But even as victory settled in, a sense of unease began to form within me. I knew that pain would never completely disappear. Life was a cycle of light and shadow, and while I had found a path to liberation, the internal battle would continue. "Let's move forward," Andre said, holding my hand tightly. I knew that, no matter what the future held, I would not face pain alone. The light we had created together was a promise that transformation was possible, and that even in the darkest hours, there would always be a way to find the light. And so, with renewed hope, we left the house behind, ready to face whatever came next. The light finally dissipated, and with it, the feeling of oppression that had taken over the house. Andre and I stepped out, our footsteps echoing in the silence that followed the storm we had faced. But as the house became a distant memory, the weight of the experience still lingered within me. I felt the emotional scars forming, like invisible marks I would carry forever. Each breath was a reminder of the battle fought, of the Guardian we had faced, and the pain he represented. I had confronted the darkness and somehow found light, but at what cost? The voices of the freed souls still resonated in my mind, an echo of hopes and laments that could not be ignored. Andre looked at me, and I knew he felt the same burden. He had witnessed not only my struggle, but the transformation I had undergone. "Are you okay?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. I nodded, but a part of me knew the answer wasn't that simple. The battle had changed me in ways I didn't fully understand. As we walked, the landscape around us seemed more vibrant, but there was a touch of strangeness. The trees, the flowers, the sky, everything appeared more intense, as if I were seeing the world through a new, yet distorted lens. The beauty was there, but there was an undercurrent of pain and loss that I couldn't ignore. The experience had marked me, not just physically. A thin, dark scar on my hand, a reminder of the struggle, but emotionally, the wound still open in my heart. The mystery that had led us to that house was resolved, but the answers were unsatisfactory. The guardian of pain, an entity I had imagined as something evil, now seemed more like a victim. What did that mean for me? I had freed souls, but I had also liberated a part of myself I didn't know existed. The scars of the experience ran deep, and I wondered if I could live with them. Andre and I decided to walk away from the house, but not without one last look back. The structure, now illuminated by the setting sun, seemed peaceful, as if it had finally found rest. But I knew the echo of that battle would live on in me and in everyone who had passed through those doors. The guardian had been appeased, but I also knew that evil did not disappear easily. It could be lurking, waiting for the right moment to resurface, and that awareness haunted me. The road ahead unfolded, but each step was a reminder of the fragility of our journey. I might have won a battle, but the internal war would continue. The pain I faced was a part of me now, a thread woven through my story and that of all who had suffered. And even though I had discovered a way to transform that pain into strength, the struggle would never end. The mystery of the house, though resolved, left unanswered questions. What else was hidden in the darkness? What other truths waited to be revealed? The feeling that there was more at stake, something beyond the battle we had fought, lingered in my mind. It was as if the house still whispered secrets, and I knew that one day I would have to return, not just to confront what remained, but to understand what it truly meant to face the pain. As we moved away, a gentle breeze caressed my face, bringing with it a familiar scent of wildflowers. It was comforting, but it also carried a bittersweet taste. It was a sign that life went on, that there would be new beginnings, but also memories that would never fade. And so, as we left the house and its shadows behind, I knew I could not forget. The scars I carried were part of my identity. I was no longer the same, and there was no turning back. But instead of letting fear consume me, I chose to remember the light I had found, the souls that had been freed, and the strength that could emerge even from the darkest experiences. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I would face whatever came next with courage. Pain would no longer be a prison, but a starting point for a new journey. And with Andre's hand intertwined with mine, I was ready to take the next step. As I walked, my heart pulsed in a rhythm that seemed to echo the beats of a battle still fresh. Each step I took away from the house felt like a rite of passage, an attempt to distance myself from the shadows that still whispered in my mind. The setting sun bathed the path before me in golden hues, but the beauty of the scene was overshadowed by the memory of the darkness I had faced. It was a paradox, and I found myself trapped between relief and pain. The experience I had in the house was not just a struggle against a guardian of lost souls. It was a confrontation with parts of myself that I had ignored. The feeling of oppression that had surrounded me was not merely a product of the house, but a manifestation of my own insecurities and fears. What I had released were not just souls, but also the fragments of pain I carried within me, as if we had made a silent pact between us. Andre walked beside me, and his presence brought me unexpected comfort. However, even with him there, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was an abyss between us, a distance created by the truths we now knew. He had seen my despair, the fierce struggle we had fought, and I knew he had his own scars, even though we didn't speak of them. The silence that surrounded us was heavy, but also filled with understanding, a mutual recognition of the transformation we had both experienced. As the landscape unfolded before us, I allowed myself to reflect on what it all meant. I was no longer the same girl who had entered that house. The pain and struggle had indelibly shaped me. I had looked into the eyes of darkness and, instead of succumbing, had found a strength I didn't know I possessed. But what to do with that strength now? How could I use it to navigate the uncertainties of the future? The scars I carried were a constant reminder of the battle, but also a symbol of resilience. I had faced fear, and though it was still present, it no longer had the power to paralyze me. I had learned that pain can be a teacher, a guide that, though harsh, reveals profound truths about ourselves. And so, even though I was marked, I was also alive, and that, in some way, was a triumph. But what else was in the darkness? What more would I have to face? The feeling that the house still held secrets settled in me like a persistent shadow. It was a reminder that the journey did not end there. Life, like the house, was full of mysteries, and I was just a traveler in search of answers. And if pain had taught me anything, it was that each answer brings with it new questions. The world was in constant motion, and I needed to be willing to keep up with that dance, even when the rhythm was uncomfortable. As the sunlight began to fade, merging with the horizon, I realized I also had to allow myself to feel the sadness that accompanied loss. The souls we had freed, the stories they carried, deserved to be honored. I could not simply leave their pain behind without also taking a piece of it with me. It was a responsibility I could not ignore. Life was a cycle of light and darkness, and I found myself at a crucial intersection. I looked at Andre, and a silent understanding passed between us. He also carried a burden, and perhaps together we could find a way to transform that pain into something beautiful. A new journey unfolded before us, and I was ready to embrace it. The struggle was not over. It was merely taking a new form, and I was determined not to let the fear of uncertainty overpower me. And so, with twilight approaching, I made a promise to myself. I would face the shadows that still haunted me, not as a victim, but as a warrior. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to seek the light, even if darkness was still present. With Andre by my side, I knew I was not alone on this journey. The road ahead was uncertain, but it carried the promise of new discoveries. And with each step we took, I reminded myself that life is made up of moments. Moments of pain, love, struggle, and victory. And even though the scars I bore were a reminder of pain, they were also a testament to my strength. And at the end of the day, that was enough. As we continued our journey under the warm light of twilight, a feeling of unease began to form in my stomach. The path ahead seemed increasingly familiar, as if the forest were drawing us back into its dark depths. A shiver ran down my spine, and I couldn't help but wonder if the house had truly been left behind, or if it was still somehow connected to us, like a specter that refuses to fade away. Andre stopped beside me, his gaze fixed on the trail stretching out before us. "Do you feel that too?" he asked, his voice low and hesitant. The echo of his question resonated within me, as if he had put words to my unease. The forest, once lively and vibrant with sunlight, now seemed to whisper dark secrets, as if it were filled with untold stories that were about to reveal themselves. "Yes," I replied, my voice almost betraying me. "It's like something is still there." He nodded, and for a moment, we shared a silence that spoke more than 1,000 words. It was a deep connection, an understanding that our experiences in the house had left marks that would go beyond those hours of terror. The feeling that there was something more, an unresolved mystery, hung over us like a dense cloud. We continued walking, but with each step, the sensation of being watched intensified. I looked around, the trees seeming to lean in on us, as if they wanted to listen to our conversations. A part of me wanted to run, to flee the forest and leave it all behind, but another, more intrepid part felt that we couldn't simply ignore what had happened. Then, a shadow moved to our left, a quick, almost imperceptible movement, but enough to make my heart race. Andre noticed too, and our eyes met, a mix of fear and determination. "It must be just an animal," he said, but I knew it was more than that. The house had left us with something more than just memories. It had connected us to a reality we couldn't fully understand. "And what if it's not?" I whispered, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The thought that we might be being watched left me uneasy, but there was also a spark of curiosity. What else could the darkness reveal to us? What more did we need to uncover? With a surge of determination, I decided that we wouldn't back down. "Let's investigate," I declared, my voice sounding firmer than I felt. Andre hesitated, but in his gaze, I saw the same determination that had guided me before. In that moment, we were more than survivors. We were explorers of an unknown world. As we moved forward, the sounds of the forest grew more intense, almost deafening. The wind whispered through the leaves, and I could swear I heard distant laughter, echoing like memories of past events. With every step, I felt we were entering a territory where the line between life and death became increasingly thin. Finally, we reached a clearing. The sun was almost completely hidden behind the trees, and the moonlight began to filter through the branches. In the center of the clearing, an ancient stone stood, covered in moss and lichen, as if it had been waiting for us. I approached it, feeling an inexplicable calling. "This is different," Andre commented, his voice low, almost reverent. "Do you feel that too?" "Yes," I replied, my heart racing. The stone seemed to pulse with an ancient energy, and I knew there was something more there. A secret that could lead us to understand what really happened in the house. But before we could get any closer, a strong breeze swept through the clearing, and the trees seemed to stir, as if alerting us to the presence of something. And then, suddenly, the darkness deepened, and a voice whispered in the wind, carrying a tone of warning. "You shouldn't be here." Fear took hold of me, but so did curiosity. What did this voice mean? What else was lurking in the shadows? The questions multiplied in my mind, and I realized that the search for answers was just beginning. Andre and I exchanged a glance, and in that instant, I understood that our journey was far from over. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges and mysteries waiting for us. But no matter what awaited us, I knew I couldn't turn back. We were the guardians of our own stories, and the darkness, while terrifying, could also be the key to discovering the light within us. Now, I invite you to reflect on your own experiences. What shadows have you faced, and what light have you found along the way? Share your stories in the comments, as they help create a community of resilience and hope. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue this journey together, unraveling the mysteries that surround us. What else can the darkness teach us? The answer may be closer than we think.